My phone buzzed while I was rinsing a coffee mug in the sink. The apartment was quiet in that late-night way, like the building itself had decided to stop moving. I glanced at the screen. 11:49 p.m. One voicemail. I listened with the volume low. My sister's voice came through flat and certain, like she was reading something she'd already practiced. "You're out. Don't come back. We're moving on without you." I held the phone for a second after it ended, just staring at the little blue playback bar like it might change its mind. Then I set the mug in the drying rack. I wiped my hands on a dish towel. I typed one word back to her, nothing else. Okay. No follow-up, no question marks, no second message. I put the phone face down on the counter and walked to the window. The parking lot lights were still on. A car door shut somewhere below, then the sound faded. I stood there long enough to feel my breathing slow. By morning, there would be 46 missed calls, and a message from their lawyer that started with, "We have a serious problem." I did not know that yet. I only knew what she'd said and how easy it suddenly felt to stop chasing clarity from people who avoided it. I went to bed without turning on the TV. I did not scroll. I didn't replay the voicemail. I stared at the ceiling fan until my eyes got heavy. Then I slept. I woke before my alarm, the kind of early you get when your body decides something has shifted. The room was still dark. My phone was on the nightstand, screen down where I left it. I picked it up. There were already missed calls. 7. All from her. I didn't listen to any messages. Not yet. I got up and moved through my small routine. Bathroom light, cold tile under my feet. Toothpaste, water running. The smell of coffee when the machine clicked on. I sat at the little table by the kitchen window, the one my sister used to call temporary, like it was a diagnosis. The phone started again, vibrating, stopping, vibrating again. More calls. My mother, my father, my sister again. Over and over, like a metronome that couldn't keep time. I took one sip of coffee, lukewarm already because I'd been holding the mug too long and not drinking. Then I opened my laptop. There's a point in some families where roles become invisible. Not because they don't exist, but because everyone benefits from pretending they don't. My sister, Carla, was the executive on paper. She liked titles. She liked being in charge. She talked in summaries and decisions. She kept everything neat as long as somebody else dealt with the mess. I was the operational contact. I never asked for the label. It just happened, slowly, the way responsibility gets handed to the person who doesn't drop it. The family trust was the center of it. My parents set it up years ago when they moved out of the old place in Scottsdale and into a smaller house on the west side of Phoenix. They called it keeping things simple. What it really meant was shared access, vague boundaries, and one rule nobody said out loud. Don't question your sister. I knew the login. I knew the security questions. I knew which bank rep to call when something flagged, and which insurance document was always missing one signature. I knew the property tax schedule and the HOA fees, and the name of the escrow officer handling the sale. The house deal had been moving quietly in the background for months. Carla would say, "We're selling Mom and Dad's place," like she was doing a hard, noble thing. What she meant was she wanted the money freed up, fast, and she didn't want delays. My name was on the transaction, not as an owner, but as a required signer. Years ago, when nobody else wanted to be the one responsible, I said yes. I did it the way I do most things, without making a speech about it. The trust dashboard loaded. Familiar numbers, familiar tabs, familiar weight. I rested my hands on the keyboard and looked at the screen for a long moment, not rushing it. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint city noise outside, distant and steady. My phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up. I moved the cursor to the permissions panel, the one Carla probably didn't even remember existed. Then I waited. The permissions page was plain, almost boring. Names in a list, roles beside them. a set of checkboxes that looked harmless until you understood what they controlled. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel shaky. I felt clear in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. In that family, clarity was always treated like an inconvenience. If you asked for it, you were making things difficult. If you pushed for it, you were creating tension. And if you stayed quiet, you were easy, which really meant useful. I clicked into the access settings and did the first thing I always did when I wanted to be sure I wouldn't have to revisit something later. I read everything twice. I removed my sister's elevated permissions. I left her viewing access because that's what the documents required in that stage. Then I locked operational changes behind a two-step approval that could only be completed with my authentication. It was dry, administrative, and completely within the framework of the trust as it was written. No message attached, no note, no dramatic subject line, just a clean change. I saved it, logged out, and closed the laptop. For a few seconds, I sat there with my hands in my lap, listening to the faint whistle of the kettle as it warmed on the stove. That little sound made the apartment feel normal, like the world hadn't shifted in the last 8 hours. My phone vibrated again. I let it buzz itself tired. When it stopped, the screen lit up with new missed calls. Carla again. My mother, my father, and a couple of numbers I didn't recognize, which I assumed were relatives who wouldn't have called me at all if their day was going smoothly. I didn't call anyone back. Instead, I opened my notes app and wrote down a simple list. Not because I needed it, but because it kept my mind from slipping into the old habit of managing everything at once. Step 1. Trust access. Step 2. Property sale. Step 3. Remove my name from shared obligations. I stared at the list for a moment. Then I got up and did what I should have done years earlier. I handled the house. The escrow officer's name was Megan. She was efficient, polite, and always sounded like she had 3 other calls waiting. I'd spoken to her enough times that she recognized my voice quickly. "Hey, Megan, it's Ryan Harper." A pause, then the slight shift in tone that told me she'd pulled the file. "Hi, Ryan. Yes, I have it. Everything okay?" I looked at the light coming through the blinds. Morning sun, thin and pale. The air in the apartment still held the scent of coffee and dish soap. "I need to pause the transaction," I said, effective immediately. Her silence was brief, professional. "Is there a dispute?" "There is now," I said. She didn't ask me to explain. She didn't need to. Escrow people know the difference between a bad day and a legal problem. She asked only what she was required to ask. "Do you want that as a written notice as well?" "Yes," I said. "I'll email right after this call. Please confirm receipt." "I will," she said. "And Ryan, you understand pausing could impact the timeline." "I understand," I said. That's the point. When the call ended, I sent a short email to her, the kind that leaves no room for interpretation. I included my full name, the property address, the file number, and a direct instruction to halt. Then I saved a copy to my folder. I didn't feel dramatic sending it. It felt like returning a borrowed item to the right place. After that, I opened a second folder, one I hadn't touched in a while. It was labeled Trust, and inside it were the things I kept so nobody else had to remember. Statements, insurance letters, copies of tax receipts, notes about which bills were due when, a scanned version of the trust document with my highlights, and my sister's signature on the page where she agreed to the role she rarely performed. I clicked the trust document and scrolled slowly, not searching, just moving through it like I was walking through a familiar house. There it was, exactly as I remembered. Unanimous operational consent required for major transactions involving the property. Carla hated that clause. She'd complained about it more than once, rolling her eyes and saying it was overprotective. I used to shrug and tell her it was what Mom and Dad wanted. What I didn't say, because it wasn't worth the fight, was that the clause existed because my parents didn't fully trust her with speed. They trusted her with appearances, not with process. My phone buzzed again, hard enough to shake the table slightly. I watched it, then flipped it over. 46 missed calls was later. Right now, it was still climbing. A new voicemail appeared from my mother. I didn't listen. Another from my father. I didn't listen to that either. A new number called, and I recognized the area code immediately. Downtown Phoenix. Office buildings. Law firms. It rang twice, then cut to voicemail. I didn't pick up. I set my phone down, opened my laptop again, and pulled up the bank portal where the trust account sat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second, not hesitating, just making sure I was acting with intention and not reflex. Because there was a difference, and I'd spent too many years pretending there wasn't. I logged in. The dashboard loaded. Familiar numbers, familiar weight, and a small alert at the top of the screen that hadn't been there yesterday. I leaned closer, read it once, then read it again. Then I closed the laptop and went very still. Not because I was surprised, because I understood what it meant. And because I knew, finally, that the next part wouldn't be about feelings at all. It would be about records. The alert was small, easy to miss if you were rushing. Unrecognized login attempt detected. Location, Tempe, Arizona. Time, 6:18 a.m. Action blocked pending verification. I read it once, then again, slower. Tempe wasn't me. I was sitting in my kitchen, barefoot on tile, coffee going cold in my hand. Tempe was my sister's office area. She worked out of a shared suite near a strip of restaurants she liked, the kind where the staff learned your name if you tipped well. I didn't move right away. I just sat there, letting the meaning settle without giving it extra emotion. Carla hadn't called to talk. She'd called to regain access. That was the first honest thing that had happened all day. I clicked into the activity log. The bank had a clean record of everything, which was one of the reasons I'd chosen them when my parents asked me to help set the trust up. They logged the time, the device type, the location, and the specific page the user tried to access. It wasn't a casual login. It was a direct attempt to reach the transfer panel. I took a screenshot and saved it to the folder with the trust documents. Then I saved a second copy to a separate folder labeled Personal, because I'd learned the hard way not to keep everything in one place. My phone buzzed again. I watched it light up, face up now, because I wasn't avoiding it. I was observing it. Carla. Carla again. My father. My mother. Then the unknown downtown number called again. This time, I answered. Ryan Harper, I said. A man's voice, controlled and careful, like he was trying not to sound like a problem. Mr. Harper, this is Daniel Klein. I'm counsel for your family trust. I've been asked to contact you about some developments this morning. I didn't correct him. He wasn't counsel for the trust. He was counsel for my sister, and everyone pretended that was the same thing. I'm aware, I said. A pause. He adjusted quickly to the fact that I wasn't panicking. We have a serious issue, he said. The trust access appears to have been changed, and the pending property transaction has been interrupted. Yes, I said. He waited for more. For a justification. For me to fill the silence with explanations like I always used to. I didn't. He cleared his throat lightly. Can you tell me why you did this? I looked down at the activity log on my laptop. The alert sat there like a simple fact. My sister left a voicemail last night, I said. She said I'm out and not to come back. So I stepped back. He didn't respond right away. I could almost hear him deciding which version of the story he'd been given. I understand there was a disagreement, he said, but these actions have consequences. They already did, I said. That voicemail had consequences. Another pause, longer this time. Your parents are very upset, he said, as if that was the most important detail. I'm sure they are, I said. He tried a different angle. The sale is time-sensitive. The buyer could walk. Yes, I said again. That's what happens when a transaction becomes unstable. His voice stayed polite, but a little tighter now. Would you be willing to restore access while we work this out? I kept my eyes on the laptop screen. I didn't look away like I was ashamed of what I'd done. I'm willing to meet, I said, in person, with you and my parents and my sister. He exhaled softly, like that was more than he wanted, but not something he could refuse. That may be possible, he said, but in the meantime, we need cooperation. I'm cooperating, I said. I'm just not being erased. He didn't answer that directly. Lawyers rarely do when a sentence lands too cleanly. Let's start with intentions, he said. What are you trying to achieve here? I could have said a lot. Years of details, years of small situations that added up. I could have explained how often Carla called me only when she needed something handled, how my parents took her tone as leadership and my silence as compliance. Instead, I kept it simple. I want everything documented, I said, and I want my involvement defined, not assumed. His voice softened, almost reassuring. That sounds reasonable. Good, I said. Then it shouldn't be hard. He told me he'd be in touch about scheduling. Then he ended the call. I didn't feel relief. I felt confirmation. I opened my email and searched for the trust correspondence thread. It was long, a chain that went back years, full of little updates and reminders I'd sent that nobody thanked me for. I scrolled until I found the original setup messages and the PDF attachments. Then I created a new folder in my inbox and named it something plain. Trust meeting. I dragged the important emails into it. I pulled the activity logs from the bank. I saved the escrow pause confirmation that Megan had already replied with, short and professional. Transaction paused as requested. Will advise all parties. My phone vibrated again. This time it was my mother. I let it ring until it stopped. Not because I didn't care, because if I answered, I knew what would happen. She would cry. She would apologize without naming anything, and then she would ask me to fix it quietly so nobody had to feel uncomfortable. I wasn't doing quiet fixes anymore. I stood up and walked to the living room. The sunlight had shifted, brighter now. Dust floated in it near the window, slow and harmless. I picked up a small plastic bin from the closet, the one I used for old paperwork, and set it on the table. Then I started sorting. Trust documents in one stack, property documents in another, bank correspondence in another. Not a dramatic ritual, just organization. When everything was in order, I sat back down, opened my laptop, and waited for the next email. Because I knew the next thing they'd try wouldn't be an apology. It would be a tactic, and I wanted to see it in writing. The first email came just after noon. Subject line in all caps, like volume could substitute for logic. Ryan, this is unacceptable. It was from my aunt, the one who hosted Thanksgiving every year and treated everyone's conflict like a scheduling problem. The message was short, no questions, just an instruction to do the right thing, followed by a reminder that family is family. I didn't reply. Then another email. Then another. Old group threads came back to life like someone had shaken dust off them. People who hadn't checked in on me in years suddenly wanted to understand. They used soft phrases that sounded caring until you noticed none of them asked what happened. They asked what I'd done. I watched the pattern the way you watch weather roll in. First, blame. Then, confusion. Then, panic, dressed up as reason. I didn't engage. I kept my attention on the process. I reopened my Notes app and added to the list, not as a threat, just as an outline. Step 1. Document the trust access change and the attempted login. Step 2. Confirm escrow halt and save confirmation. Step 3. Remove my personal exposure to any shared obligations that weren't mine to carry. The third step wasn't emotional. It was practical. I'd been listed as the operational contact on more than one account. Utility billing, Insurance correspondence. A storage unit my parents insisted on keeping just in case, full of furniture nobody wanted. When things went wrong, my phone rang. When things went right, my name didn't come up at all. I logged into the insurance portal first and changed the contact email from mine to the generic trust email that Carla had insisted they set up, then never checked. I updated the mailing address back to my parents' home and removed my cell number as the primary contact. Then I moved to the storage unit account and removed my autopay card. I did it slowly and cleanly, checking each confirmation screen. When the system sent, "Are you sure?" prompts, I didn't hesitate, but I also didn't rush. I read every line. I saved every confirmation email to the folder. It wasn't revenge. It was separation. My phone buzzed. Not in bursts now, but in single calls spaced out. Longer rings. More restraint. That was how I knew the tone had changed. Carla didn't call when she felt powerful. She called when she was losing control. At 1:17 p.m., I finally listened to a voicemail from her. Her voice was tighter than it had been the night before, pitched a little higher. "Call me back. This is getting out of hand." 10 minutes later, another. "You're embarrassing yourself." Then another, quieter. "We can talk about this." I deleted them without replying. Not because I didn't hear her, because I did. And because if she wanted to talk, she could start with the part where she told me I didn't belong. My father called at 2:06 p.m. I answered because I knew if I didn't, he'd show up. He had a habit of doing that when he needed control, and then calling it concern. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. No hello, no commentary, just accusation wrapped in a question. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the paperwork stacks on my table. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee and printer paper. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I stopped doing things." He went silent for a moment, then tried a steadier tone. "That trust was set up for the family." "I'm family," I said. A pause long enough to tell me exactly where I stood. "Your sister is under a lot of stress," he said finally. I almost smiled. It was the oldest line in the house. "She told me not to come back," I said. "So I didn't." "That was said in anger," he said. "She didn't sound angry," I said. "She sounded finished." He exhaled through his nose, the way he did when he wanted me to stop making the facts inconvenient. "You're taking this too literally," he said. I picked up my mug and took a sip. Cold. Bitter. "Every time I asked for clarity in this family," I said, "I was told words matter." He didn't respond to that. "What happens if the house sale falls through?" he asked. "That depends," I said. "On what?" "On whether I'm still considered disposable," I said. His silence was sharper now. He hadn't expected me to say it out loud. "This isn't the time to make a point," he said. "I didn't make one," I said. "Carla did." He hung up. After that, the lawyer emailed again. The subject line was toned down, like someone had told him to stop inflaming things. He asked for a meeting. Not a call. A meeting. He said it would be productive and efficient if all parties were present. I replied with one sentence. "I am available tomorrow at 10 a.m. downtown. Please confirm attendees and location in writing." Then I closed my laptop. I wasn't stonewalling. I was waiting, because people like Carla rarely lead with apology. They lead with strategy. And the strategy usually includes one of two things: pressure or performance. I wanted to see which one she picked. At 3:07 p.m., I heard the knock. Not a polite tap. A firm, repeated knock, like the door belonged to her and I was the one delaying. I walked to it without hurrying. I looked through the peephole. Carla stood in the hallway in a fitted blazer she probably kept for situations where she needed to look credible. Her hair was pulled back tight, phone in hand. Eyes already narrowed, already scanning. I opened the door and didn't step aside. She looked past me into my apartment first, like the space was part of the argument, like she could measure my value by what she saw. "You look calm," she said. "I am," I said. Her mouth tightened. "You can't hold the family hostage." "I'm not," I said. "I was removed." She scoffed lightly, a practice sound. "You're overreacting to a voicemail." "You were very clear," I said. She stepped closer. "You always do this," she said. "You take things personally." I kept my voice even. "You told me not to come back," I said, "so I didn't." She stared at me, like she was searching for the version of me that used to flinch. "You know how much is riding on that sale," she said. "Yes," I said. "That's why you shouldn't have told me I was out." She laughed once, short and sharp. "You're punishing everyone because your feelings got hurt." "No," I said. "I stopped cushioning everyone while mine were ignored." Her eyes flicked again into the apartment. The paperwork stacks, the quiet order, the fact that I hadn't been knocked off balance. "Mom's crying," she said, like it was a weapon she expected to work. I didn't answer. "She says you're tearing the family apart," Carla added. I leaned lightly against the doorframe. "Then she should ask herself why one voicemail did all this," I said. Carla's jaw tightened. The hallway light caught the tension in her face. "The lawyer says if you don't reverse this," she said, "things could get messy." "I'm not afraid of messy," I said. "I lived in it." She looked at me for a long second. Then her expression changed. Not anger, calculation. "What do you want?" she asked. There it was. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't perform. "I want exactly what you told me," I said. "To move on." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer." "It is," I said. "You just don't like it." She took a step back, suddenly aware she wasn't getting leverage here. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up. "They're talking about replacing you," she said. "Legally, that takes time," I said, "and cooperation." Her face tightened again. She wanted to say something sharp, something final. Instead, she swallowed it. "You're making a mistake," she said. I shrugged once. "So did you." She turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door, locked it, and stood still for a moment with my hand on the knob. Then I went back to the table, opened my laptop, and refreshed my email. Because the next message would tell me exactly how desperate they'd become. The meeting location came through by email at 7:42 p.m. A law office downtown, 12th floor, glass conference room. Neutral furniture, neutral tone. The kind of place where everyone tries to sound reasonable because the walls are too clean for excuses. I replied with a simple confirmation and went back to my evening. I washed the dishes. I folded laundry. I wiped the counter and put a small stack of papers into a plain folder. Not the whole archive, just what mattered. The escrow pause confirmation, the trust clause page, the bank activity log, and the voicemail file, saved and backed up. I slept. In the morning, I left early. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. The air was cooler than it had been all week, and the sky had that pale winter brightness that makes everything look honest. The lobby smelled like polished stone and coffee from a kiosk near the elevators. I checked in at the front desk. They handed me a badge with my name printed in block letters. On the ride up, the elevator was silent. 2 people in suits stared at their phones like they were trying to disappear into them. I watched the floor numbers climb and felt the familiar urge to prepare speeches, to rehearse explanations. I didn't. When I got to the reception area, the assistant led me to the conference room. The door was already closed. Voices were muffled behind it, not loud, just tense. She opened it and stepped aside. Carla was there, of course, already seated, posture straight, phone face down on the table like it was a symbol of restraint. My parents sat together on the other side. My mother held her purse in her lap like an anchor. My father's hands were folded, then unfolded, then folded again. Nobody stood. Nobody hugged. Nobody asked if I was okay. That was fine. I wasn't there for comfort. The lawyer, Daniel Klein, stood as I entered, a controlled smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Harper," he said, "thank you for coming." I sat in the chair nearest the end of the table and placed my folder in front of me. I didn't open it yet. Daniel closed the door and took his seat. He folded his hands. "We're here to resolve an impasse," he said. I didn't correct him. It wasn't an impasse. It was a consequence. If I started by arguing vocabulary, we'd spend the morning pretending the issue was tone. Carla spoke first, like she always did. Like the order of speaking meant the order of authority. "This never should have escalated," she said. I looked at her. I kept my face neutral. "You escalated it," I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was measuring how far she could push. "You know what I meant," she said. "That voicemail was private." "You left it," I said, "on purpose." My mother's eyes filled immediately. She lifted her hand slightly, like she was trying to quiet the room without using words. "Can we not do this like this?" she said. "Like what?" I asked, genuinely. "In a room where people have to be specific?" Daniel lifted a hand, polite. "Let's focus on the legal reality," he said. "As it stands, the trust requires unanimous operational consent for any major transaction involving the property sale." Carla's jaw tightened. "Which is ridiculous," she said. "It's protective," I said. "That's why it exists." She turned to Daniel, trying to pull him back into alignment. "There has to be a workaround." "There is," he said carefully, "but it involves time, court approval, and disclosures you may not want examined." My father shifted in his chair, the first sign of discomfort. "We don't need court," he said. "Then don't treat me like I don't exist," I said. The room went still. Not dramatic still, the kind where everyone hears what was said and can't unhear it. Carla exhaled sharply. "What do you want?" she asked, slower this time. I didn't answer right away. I opened my folder and slid a single printed page across the table toward Daniel. The trust clause, highlighted. Unanimous operational consent. Then I slid the escrow confirmation email printout. Transaction paused as requested. Then the bank activity log screenshot. Unrecognized login attempt, Tempe. Carla's eyes flicked to it. A quick glance, then away. I kept my voice even. "I want my role acknowledged," I said. "Or removed cleanly." Carla scoffed quietly. "You already removed yourself," she said. "No," I said. "You tried to." Daniel leaned in slightly, hands still folded. "If I may," he said, "the voicemail does matter. It establishes intent to exclude, which complicates any claim of cooperation failure." Carla stared at him, irritated, like she didn't like hearing legal reality from someone she paid. "It was a moment," she said. "It was recorded," Daniel replied. My mother whispered my name, soft, almost like a warning. "Please." I looked at her, really looked, and kept my tone calm. "You heard it, didn't you?" I asked. She didn't answer. "You heard her tell me not to come back," I said. "And you said nothing." Her shoulders slumped. That was the closest thing to an admission I was going to get. I didn't press her. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. I rested my hands on the table, palms down, steady. "I've spent years keeping things running," I said, "paying attention so nobody else had to. Fixing problems quietly so nobody had to be uncomfortable. And the one time Carla decided I was inconvenient, I was told to disappear." Carla leaned back and shook her head, as if shaking her head could erase what she'd said. "That's not fair," she said. "It's accurate," I replied. Daniel nodded, small and professional. "Here are the options," he said. 1. We restore cooperative access, move forward with the sale, and amend the trust to clarify roles. 2. We initiate removal proceedings, which will freeze assets until resolved. And 3. Mr. Harper steps away entirely. His access is revoked with compensation for his administrative role, and the sale timeline resets. Carla stiffened. That could cost us the buyer, she said. Yes, Daniel said. It likely would. The room waited. I felt the familiar expectation in the air, the old pattern, that I would bend, smooth, absorb, fix. I didn't. I choose 3, I said. Carla's head snapped toward me. You can't be serious. I am, I said. I don't want access. I want separation. My father frowned, the way he did when the outcome didn't serve his sense of order. This hurts everyone, he said. It protects me, I said. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold. I let her. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. Why now? She whispered. Because now you noticed, I said. Daniel opened his folder and started listing what would be required. Signatures, dates, formal notices, updated contact designations, compensation terms for administrative duties. All of it clean and procedural, like the family itself was being converted into clauses. Carla kept staring at me, as if she was waiting for the old version of me to apologize for making things inconvenient. Instead, I stayed steady. This is your choice, she said, voice tight. I'm accepting it, I replied. You offered it. Daniel asked one more question, careful. Just to confirm, Mr. Harper, you are requesting a formal separation from operational involvement, effective upon execution of the amendment? Yes, I said. In writing. He nodded and made a note. The meeting ended without a sudden resolution, just paperwork in motion. Timelines pushed, pressure redistributed. The air felt thinner as we stood. My father wouldn't look at me directly. My mother looked like she wanted to say something meaningful and couldn't find the words. Carla leaned in close as we reached the door, her voice low. You think you've won? I met her eyes and kept my tone level. I think I've left, I said. Outside the conference room, the hallway was quiet. The assistant smiled politely like none of it mattered. The elevator doors opened and closed with soft chimes. People moved past us carrying laptops and coffee like the world was normal. I walked to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a moment without turning the key. My phone was silent, which felt strange. Then it buzzed once. An email notification from Megan in escrow. No drama. No big subject line. Just a single sentence in the preview that made everything around me feel even quieter than before. I opened it and read it slowly, then set the phone down and stared through the windshield at the street below. Megan's email was short. No emotion, just process. Buyer has withdrawn due to uncertainty. File will remain paused until further instruction. That was it. I sat in my car with the phone in my hand and felt something almost gentle move through me. Not satisfaction. Not relief exactly. More like the sound of a machine turning off after running too long. I started the engine and drove home. By the time I walked back into my apartment, the family group chat was alive again. Not angry this time. Busy. People typing like they were trying to outrun consequences with words. My aunt asked what happened. A cousin wrote, "Is the buyer really out?" Someone else wrote, "This is getting serious." I didn't respond. I set my keys on the hook by the door. I poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly, standing by the counter, looking at the sunlight on the floor. My phone rang once. My father. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother. I let it go too. A few minutes later, Daniel emailed a formal update, the kind meant to be forwarded. He confirmed the buyer's withdrawal. He confirmed the trust was now exposed to delay risk. He confirmed the meeting summary in polite legal language that avoided blame but didn't hide the sequence of events. It included one line that stood out. Operational cooperation cannot be presumed at this time. I read that sentence twice, then saved the email to the folder. That afternoon, Daniel sent the first draft of the amendment. Dry language, clean lines. The kind of document that doesn't care who cried or who yelled or who meant something in anger. It only cared what was recorded, what was signed, and what could be enforced. It spelled out my role in plain terms. It gave it an end date. It listed compensation for administrative duties already performed, structured in a way that made it look like closure instead of conflict. A modest amount, not life-changing, but enough to make it official that my time had value. Enough to make it harder for anyone to pretend I was just being difficult. My sister didn't call that day. She texted, "We need to talk." No apology, no ownership, just need. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed the draft and read it with a pen in hand, the way I do when something actually matters. I circled the parts that needed to be clearer. I underlined a clause that mentioned continued cooperation as necessary, and I wrote 2 words beside it. Define necessary. Then I emailed Daniel back with 3 simple edits and 1 boundary. I will not resume operational access. I will cooperate only through documented requests and only until the separation date. He replied within an hour. Understood. That night, my mother called again. I answered, not because I was ready to comfort anyone, but because I didn't want this handled through other people. Her voice sounded smaller than I was used to hearing, like she'd been trying to hold herself together all day and was finally tired. "Your sister isn't sleeping," she said. I leaned against the counter. The apartment was quiet, just the soft hum of the fridge and the distant sound of traffic. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it in the simplest way. Not sorry for what I did. Sorry that this was the price of learning. "She's scared," my mother whispered. "She told me to leave," I said. A pause. "I know," my mother said, almost inaudible. That was new. Not a fix, not an excuse, just a small truth. "They're saying the buyer won't come back," she continued. "People are talking. The market's shifting." "I didn't change the market," I said. "No," she said, and then softer. "But you changed the plan." I closed my eyes. Not from pain. From the strange relief of hearing her say it out loud. "That plan never included me," I said. "It just used me." She didn't argue. The line stayed quiet for a moment, filled with her breathing and mine. Then she said she loved me. The words landed awkwardly, like something taken off a shelf after years of collecting dust. "I love you too," I said. "I just can't do this anymore." When we hung up, I sat at my small kitchen table and looked at the paperwork stacks. They were neat now, contained. That alone felt like progress. 2 days later, Daniel sent the revised draft. It was better, clearer, tighter. The necessary cooperation language was replaced with specific, limited requests, time-bound, and only for execution of separation. No open doors, no vague expectations. The next day, we signed. Not in a dramatic meeting. No conference room scene. Daniel arranged signatures through secure links and in-person notarization where required. My parents signed first. Then Carla, then me. I watched my sister's signature appear on the final page time-stamped at 11:03 a.m. She didn't call to discuss it. She didn't ask if I was sure. She just signed the way she signs anything she believes she can still manage. Then I signed. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a bank notification. The compensation transfer landed cleanly. 1 deposit. Memo line. Administrative settlement. I stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone down. That was the truth of it. Not the arguing, not the guilt, not the family speeches. A number, a date, a document. Over the next week, the story around me shifted the way stories always do in families that can't tolerate accountability. I heard it through small messages from relatives. I didn't correct them. I was independent now, not dramatic. I was taking space now, not difficult. They needed words that didn't accuse them, and I didn't care enough to fight for accuracy. Carla didn't reach out directly until the day the separation became effective. One last message, late evening. I didn't mean it like that. I read it twice. Then I typed 2 words. I know. And I blocked her. Not as a punishment, as a boundary that didn't require maintenance. A minute later, an email arrived from Daniel. Final confirmation. Separation executed. Access revoked. Contacts updated. My name removed from operational responsibility going forward. I opened the attachment and read it slowly. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the kitchen light, and stood for a moment in the quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't suspense. The kind that means the paperwork is done. The next morning I woke up before my alarm, but this time it wasn't that tight, braced feeling. It was just my body doing what it does when the night has been uninterrupted. I made tea instead of coffee. I wiped down the counter while the water heated, slow circles with a sponge, like I was resetting a space that had carried too much noise. The apartment felt the same, but I didn't. The air was still. No buzzing phone, no new messages, no sense that I owed anyone a response. I opened my laptop once, just to confirm everything was final. The trust portal showed me exactly what I expected to see. No operational access, no pending verification, no shared responsibility sitting on my shoulders like it belonged there. Then I closed it and didn't reopen it. Later, I pulled that old folder off my shelf, the one labeled Trust. It used to be thick enough to bow the cardboard. It held years of little problems I'd solved quietly. I sat at my table and went through it piece by piece. Anything that was purely administrative, I shredded. Anything that was sensitive, I placed into a sealed envelope and filed it where it belonged. Not because I planned to revisit it, but because I didn't want loose ends. When I finished, the folder was thin, manageable, almost empty. I took the trash out. I rinsed the tea mug. I stood at the window for a minute and watched a couple walk their dog in the lot below, moving at the pace of people who weren't being pulled into anyone else's urgency. That's what I noticed most after all of it. Not that my family stopped being complicated. They didn't. My parents still called sometimes, but they stayed on safe topics now. Weather, doctor appointments, a neighbor's new fence. There was a distance in it, but it wasn't fake. It was honest. They never said, "We should have protected you." They never said, "We let her treat you that way." But they also didn't ask me to fix anything anymore. And that change, small as it sounds, told me they understood something had become permanent. A few weeks later, I ran into my father at a hardware store. He was holding a pack of light bulbs and standing in the aisle like he'd forgotten what he came for. He looked older than I remembered. Not weaker, just less certain. He nodded at me and tried a careful smile. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I'm sleeping," I said. He didn't laugh. He just nodded like he knew exactly what that meant. We talked for 3 minutes. Nothing heavy, nothing dramatic. Then we parted, and I walked to my car without feeling that old pull to smooth the world for him. At home that evening, I reorganized a drawer I'd ignored for years. Receipts, old keys, random manuals. I threw out what didn't matter, kept what did, and put everything in the place it belonged. That became the pattern. Not revenge, not victory. Order. And the truth is, once I stopped trying to be included in a place that kept pushing me out, my life got quieter in a way I didn't know I needed. I stopped checking my phone for missed calls. I stopped rehearsing conversations. I stopped scanning every family message for hidden pressure. I just lived. The odd thing is, after it happened, A few people I hadn't spoken to in a long time started reaching out privately. Not publicly, not in the group chat. Quiet messages. One was from a friend I used to work with, an older guy named Leon. He told me his brother had been using his name on paperwork for years, just to keep things moving, and Leon didn't know how to step out without being painted as the problem. I read his message twice, then told him the simplest truth I'd learned. If your name is on it, your life is in it. And if people only value you when they need you, that isn't respect. That's convenience. I didn't tell him what to do. I just told him to document everything, move in steps, and stop negotiating with anyone who refuses to be specific. After that, I made tea again and stood at the sink while the water ran warm. Same apartment, same quiet. A life that finally had room to breathe. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. If this story felt familiar in any way, I'm glad you're here. Before you go, tap like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is right now for you. Also, 2 popular stories will appear next, so take a look at those when they pop up.